In this video, I'm going to show you guys how to replace your rear axle in your Subaru Forester. It's located behind your rear wheels. I'm going to use a 19mm socket to take the lug nuts off the rear wheel. Usually put the lug nut on the top for the last one. And keep a hand on it when I take it off. So we're going to unping our axle nut. Just bend that back out. Use a screwdriver, whatever you can find to allow the nut to come off. All right, so now you're going to get a 32mm axle nut socket. I'm going to take that off. Make sure your axle's free. Ours is. All right, so we're going to use a 10mm and take our ABS sensor out. I'm going to use a flathead screwdriver. Our car's pretty rusty. You want to get rid of whatever rust there is around it before you start prying it out, because you don't want anything falling into that hole once you pull out that sensor. All right, so you're going to take out your ABS sensor and place it off to the side. Okay, so now you're going to use a 12mm socket and take off the bracket bolt for the brake hose. And we're just going to place that off to the side as well. Our next step is to take off this caliper bracket. I'm going to use a 14mm socket and take out the caliper bracket bolts. All right, once you take that off, you're going to use a bungee cord or a caliper hanger and just put that off to the side. All right, so you're going to take out your rubber plug. Don't lose that. You're going to need that to put it back. And you're going to push the wheel down towards the floor to back off the brake shoes. All right, once that's backed off, you can take your rotor off. So we're going to be taking off this knuckle, and in order to do that we need to disconnect many parts. So we're going to start with this cotter pin here. All right, in order to take this out, use pliers of some sort. All right, next up, we are going to use a 17mm long socket. We're going to use a 17mm socket and a 17mm wrench, and we're going to take out this top bolt. All right, so now we are going to take out this bolt. Use a 17mm socket and a 17mm wrench. Now we're going to use the same size 17mm socket and a 17mm wrench and take out this lower control arm. All right, so now I put my nut back on slightly just so I can tap out my bolts. So So you're going to do that with all of them. Bang this on the side and that's going to fall down. Now we're going to take out this bolt. We're going to use a pry bar. There's a little split in the back here. All right, we're going to take out our bottom bolt here. All right, so I'm pulling down on this, and we are disconnecting our tie rod. Okay, so now I have my knuckle all bungee corded up. I'm trying to still get this upper ball joint to break free. All right, so now we have disconnected our upper ball joint. Our bungee cord has worked out wonderfully. I'm going to move our caliper out of the way over here. I'm going to now disconnect my bungee cord with a firm hand underneath. Okay, now that we are here, we are going to push our axle out. We're just going to clip this off to the side. All right, so we have our knuckle hanging by bungee cords. Otherwise, we'd have to undo this emergency brake, which is not necessary. So I'm going to leave this in the vehicle just to make sure it's secured well. And now we're going to take our axle out. All right, so now we're just going to pry this out like that. Use a pry bar, usually good enough. And you're just gonna take it out. All right, so we're gonna put our axle in order to do that. You need to find a way to get through all your pieces and go in straight. Once you line it up, you're gonna give it a good push. All right, so now we're going to put our knuckle back in place and put our axle in. So you want to make sure that you're lined up. Make sure your ball joint is lined up. All right, I'm going to finger tighten my nut onto my axle just so it stays where it belongs. All right, so we're going to put our tie rod in and our ball joint in position. I'm going to place my tie rod nut on just so I don't lose my tie rod connection there. Next up, I'm going to put our lower control arm back together. Okay, so once you get your bolt in on the one side, you're going to pry up and aim for the other side. Or If you already see a little bit of the hole, you can use your punch or a screwdriver. I'm just going to give it a little tap on the bottom. There we go. And make sure you put your nut on that end. All right, so now here we are on the other side. I'm going to pry that down. Turn that out a little bit. And we're trying to line everything up. All right, so here we are with our jack. I have my bolt ready. The head goes this way, towards the underneath of the vehicle. I'm going to get this ready, and I'm going to jack up my jack. I have a piece of wood that is the same width as the knuckle piece, so that it doesn't interfere with me getting the bolt through. So now that we are lined up there, we are going to feed our bolt through. That. And put your nut on the other end. All right, so I'm going to use my jack to steer the knuckle this way. All right, so we're going to snug up our ball joint. We are going to be torquing down everything. So we do not want to tighten anything too much. Move my caliper bracket out of the way. We're going to use a 17 millimeter. Make sure that you are jacked up for this one because it needs to be at ride height for the strut. All right, we're going to torque our ball joint at 28 foot-pounds. This is 25 foot-pounds. $67 foot-pounds. All right, down here is 59 foot-pounds. And now we're going to put our cotter pin back in to our flange bolt. All right, so I'm going to put my rotor on. I'm going to take my plug out and readjust the rotor. First I'm going to put a lug nut on just to hold it on. All right, so we're looking for a little drag when we're adjusting our brakes. You're going to push up towards the sky, the wheel inside, to make the shoes go out. So what I typically do is I adjust it out until I can't move the rotor, and then I back it off. So that's good. And that sounds pretty good. Take your lug nut off after you put your plug in. And then take our bracket and pads. Make sure your pads are in position. These ones are a little floppy, so you got to make sure they stay in while you're placing it in there. I recommend you do the same. Now we can start our bolts. I'll do the top one first. "49 foot-pounds for our brake caliper bracket. All right, so now we're going to put our hose bracket, brake hose bracket, back in place. And we can place our ABS sensor back in. Just snug that up. All right, so once you get your ABS sensor in there, you can put your bolt in. Hand tighten first. Make sure it's flush and then snug it down. About wrist tight. All right, for this car, you can just take out the center of your wheel. All right. We're going to put the wheel on, and then we're going to torque the axle nut when it's on the ground. All right, so now we can torque our axle nut to 140 foot-pounds. Make sure you peen over your axle nut when you are done torquing. Now you can put your center cap on. Now we're going to torque our rear wheels to 89 foot-pounds in a star-like pattern. I usually check one more time, go all the way around, just to make sure I got them all.
When only the best will do, demand TRQ. The only company that lets you view before you do. TRQ is committed to offering the highest quality aftermarket auto parts that are engineered for peace of mind. Thanks for using and viewing with TRQ.